All right, Evan, stand by. We're awaiting the start of this news conference down in Florida. The Governor, Rick Scott, expected to make a statement, answer questions. Also, the Broward County Sheriff, Scott Israel, among others. We'll have live coverage of that. New information we anticipate will emerge from this news conference. So everyone get ready for that. In the meantime, I want to bring in our panel. Phil Mudd, you've been watching this very carefully. Even if authorities are able to identify and locate someone who has expressed very violent, perhaps even deadly tendencies, do they have the tools right now to do anything about it?
I think that is the key question in the coming days. I think there's going to be a rush to judgment, and we've seen this in the past few hours, to say, what should the FBI have done? I talked to school administrators today and police chiefs across the country, including here in Miami. There's one issue that I think we can get at that we might risk missing if we keep focusing on the FBI, and that is when a kid is 15, 16, 17 years old and a school sees evidence of violence,
hold on.
What do they do?
The sheriff of Broward County is speaking.
Briefing tonight. I'm going to start off by giving you a timeline and talk about the events that happened yesterday. I'm then going to introduce Peter Forcelli, the SAC of ATF, and he's going to talk about the origin of the rifle. And then lastly, you'll hear from a special agent in charge of the FBI, Rob Lasky, and he's going to expound a little bit more on the tip. Then I'll come back to the podium, we'll answer some questions. So I wanted to start out by telling you an Uber car dropped off the suspect at 2019 yesterday, 2:19 p.m. at Stoneman Douglas High School. The suspect entered the east stairwell, that's building 12, with a rifle inside a black, soft case. The suspect exited the stairwell, pulled the rifle out of the case. At 2:21 hours and 33 seconds, the suspect readied his rifle and began shooting into rooms 1215, 1216, 1214. He went back to 1216, back to 1215, and then to 1213. The suspect then took the west stairwell to the second floor and shot one victim in room 1234 on the second floor. The suspect then took the east stairwell to the third floor. He dropped his rifle and backpack, ran down the stairs. He exited building 12 and ran towards the tennis courts, and then took a southbound turn on foot. The suspect crossed fields and ran west, along with others who were fleeing, and tried to mix in with the group that were running away, fearing for their lives. The suspect arrived at the Walmart store. He bought a drink at the Subway and then left the Walmart on foot. The suspect went to McDonald's, sat down for a short period of time. This was at 3:01 p.m. and he left on foot. At 3:41 p.m., 40 minutes after he departed from the McDonald's, the suspect was detained at 4700 Wyndham Lakes Drive in Coral Springs by an officer from the Coconut Creek Police Department. He was taken into custody without incident. Today, we've interviewed between the FBI, the Broward Sheriff's Office, and a significant amount of investigators from many other agencies, FDLE, a lot of local law enforcement. So over 2,000 people were interviewed, and we continue. This is a fluid investigation. We have so many facts coming in, some true, some unsubstantiated, some rumors. It's going to take a lot of time to sift through what's true, what's accurate, and what's not. I wanted to honor the deceased victims of this horrific killing. I'm going to do my best to pronounce the names accurately. Please forgive me if I don't pronounce the names exactly how the families do, but I thought it's very important. I want to pay homage to these families and to the victims. Carmen Schentrup, Meadow Pollock, Peter Wang, Nicholas Dworet, Christopher Hickson, my very, very, very special friend who I'll miss, Aaron Feiss, Luke Hoyer, Alana Petty, Jamie Gutenberg, Martin Duque Anguiano, Alyssa Al-Hadef, Helena Ramsey, Scott Beagle, Joaquin Oliver, Carol Loughran, Gina Montalto, and Alexander Schachter. May they rest in peace, and may God comfort their families. At this time, Special Agent in charge of ATF, Peter Forcelli, will speak about the firearm.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the men and women from ATF, I want to extend my condolences to the families of the victims and to the people of the community. And I also ask that you keep in your thoughts and prayers the first responders who responded out to this scene. 30 plus years in law enforcement, I can tell you it was a difficult one. The firearm that was utilized in this event was purchased lawfully here in the state of Florida just short of a year ago by the individual who was charged with this crime. We're here to help the Broward County Sheriff's Office follow up on any leads that may pertain to the firearm or anything else that they need. Again, I ask that you keep the folks who responded to this scene as well as the families of the victims in your thoughts and prayers as we get through these difficult days. Thank you.
Special Agent in charge Lasky addressed some of the questions you had today about tips received regarding the suspect. Mr. Lasky is going to expound upon some of that information.
Good afternoon. I'd like to take this opportunity to provide some additional information about the tip we spoke about this morning. On September 25th, 2017, the FBI field office in Jackson, Mississippi received a tip about a comment posted to a YouTube account by someone with the username Nicholas Cruz, spelled Nicholascruz. The comment said, "I'm going to be a professional school shooter." There was no additional information about the particular time, location, or further identifiers about the person who posted the comment. The complainant had provided the same information to YouTube. YouTube removed the comment. After receiving this information, FBI Jackson conducted an interview of the person who made the complaint. This person lives in Mississippi, has no connection to South Florida, and has no knowledge about the person who posted the comment. The FBI also conducted internal database reviews and open source checks. No additional information was found to positively identify the person who posted this comment. There was no connection found to South Florida. Moving forward, we will continue to gather all information about the subject as we try to identify his motives, his associates, and his actions leading up to yesterday's events. We are looking into his social media posts, his movements, his conversations leading up to the shooting, as well as any other indicators that may be out there. Again, my heart goes out to the victims, the families, and the friends, and everybody else who suffered by this cowardly and horrific act. Sheriff.
I want to take this opportunity to thank this amazing group of people flanking me, your elected officials, who came from places as far as Washington, D.C., Tallahassee, and just came down here. The calls I've received from Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, from Mayor Beam Furr, Michael Udine, Commissioner, and on and on and on. I can't thank them enough. They just want to see safety in Broward County. To all of you, thank you. We will be going over, I will be going over at 6 o'clock tonight to Pine Trails to a vigil for those that passed away. I know some of you are going to heed my remarks, and I know some of you are not, but I'm going to say them anyway. You need to respect the privacy of these families. These families are going through the most horrific time in their lives. And if they say they don't want to talk to you, respect them. Don't move forward with your camera. Don't move forward with your microphone. Let these families be. Let these families heal. They deserve that. Please honor them. Many of them have called me and asked me to transfer this message, and I hope you'll consider listening. Many of you would have done it anyway, some of you might not. Please respect these families. They lost children, they lost loved ones. Could you imagine what they're going through? Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Is he a white? Did he belong to a white nationalist group? Have you been able to confirm that? Because one's claiming him as a member.
It's not confirmed at this time. There's so much. We've heard that. We're looking into that. You know, and we'll just keep following on.
Did he speak to anyone at the McDonald's, and have you interviewed that person? If so,
he might have. I don't know at this time.
Two questions. First of all, would that make this hate crime? And also, you had mentioned yesterday 2 people shot outside the school. How does that fit into the narrative?
Well, it fits in perfectly. He could have shot them. He could have been within the school. They could have been outside. You know, this is an AR-15. This is a powerful rifle and could have easily gone through a door or shot while the door was open. So we're still examining video. It's a great question. It's something we've asked ourselves. Within a day or two, we will have the exact, answer to that. But at this time, it doesn't change or alter the timeline at all.
If it turns out that he was a member of this white nationalist group, would that classify any of these?
It certainly could.
the rooms that were targeted, were they targeted for any particular reason?
Yes. He bought the weapon in Coral Springs at a dealership called Sunrise Tactical.
Sir, you mentioned releasing some surveillance video.
No, I didn't mention release. I didn't talk about releasing any video. We're examining video, and we might release information we would cover or capture from the video. But at this time, we have no plans to release any type of surveillance video. I also want to acknowledge Superintendent Runcie. He's been with us from the.
Sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Sheriff, what type of first call?
I'm just gonna give way to the mic to Superintendent Runcie. He has some important things to say, and then I'll come back to the microphone.
Let me just first say, on behalf of the school board members and myself, our school board members here today, just reiterating what the sheriff has said. Please respect the privacy of our families as they go through this horrific situation. Again, we can't stress that enough. If you could honor them and respect them during these very difficult times. We've had hundreds of people today that have gone through our crisis services that we provided at several locations, 2 here in Parkland, 2 in Coral Springs. We'll continue to provide those tomorrow or the next day as necessary. Again, the school is closed from now throughout the weekend. We're going to be spending the next couple days figuring out what the path is to reopen the school and what type of logistical challenges we're going to have relative to what's occurred in Building 12 on this site. Once that information becomes available, we will be providing it out to the parents and the families in the community and the media as well. Again, thank you for respecting our families. Give them the space and time to grieve and get through this very difficult time.
Sheriff, is there a reason he targeted certain rooms? He seemed to have gone to specific rooms and then upstairs. Have you found any reason for that?
That's what our detectives and that's what the FBI are doing. We're interviewing him. We'll be speaking to him and gathering that information. But I can't enlighten you on that right now.
Sheriff, do you know what time the first call came?
Already, someone that it was a waitress for the security and for the crew member.
Well, he was dropped off by an Uber vehicle. And let me say this, at this point, the driver is not complicit in any way, shape, or form. The driver just simply picked up a fare and dropped the fare off at Stone. He walked into the school, and I don't know that anybody recognized him or knew who he was or at that point.
His mental health specifically, his previous condition, mental health.
I don't know anything at this time.
Sir, the
There were initial
you said
reports
that
he
there
may
were
have had
still
help
remains
a family
inside the
member.
school.
Do you have any reason to believe that a family member or anybody may have assisted him in this?
At this point, we have no reason. There are other people we want to certainly talk to. There are people of interest. that might enlighten us as to why he did what he did. But at this point, at this time, there's no accomplice or nobody else that we're looking at from that perspective.
When he was a student here, was he required to...
You made no mention of what Senator Nelson...
I'm sorry, you're talking...
What Senator Nelson mentioned yesterday about him wearing a gas mask and a bulletproof vest. No mention of that as you conveyed the timeline. Can you tell us anything more about that, whether that was true or not, or when you put him off, put him on?
No, I have no reason to believe. I haven't seen the videos yet. I'm going to be briefed tomorrow on that, but I don't know that he had a mask on at any time.
When he was a student here, was he required to carry his belongings in a clear bag because of a fear of the teachers that he might bring a weapon into the school?
I've never heard that before.
Sir, this morning you said there were still remains inside the school. Have they been taken from the school, and has the school been cleared yet?
All the victims are at the medical examiner's office, and right now the medical examiner is doing a thorough investigation. As I said before, we want to release the victims to their families. We understand that the Sabbath is tomorrow, and we're very cognizant of that. But the main thing we want to do is we want to make sure there's a successful prosecution, and we want to go as fast as we can, but accurate is better than speedy.
Sure. And is the school still being swept? Is that in inspection?
The school is a crime scene, and we're examining the crime scene. Thank you.
All our students, all of the people here.
That I read out? No. Some are. There's there are adults on the list as well.
Has the family he was staying with said anything, that they noticed anything like that, the room that he was staying in?
I'm not sure at this time. That's something that we're examining.
Is Zachary blood related with Nicholas? Are they blood brothers?
I've never heard that the first gentleman you named. I've never heard his name before. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Nicholas Cruz. Are they blood related?
The Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel and representatives from both the ATF and the FBI briefing us. We did learn that the suspect arrived at that school at 2:19 p.m. yesterday. He readied his rifle at 2:21. 2 minutes later, started shooting, and then he escaped. He was on the loose, went to a McDonald's for some 40 minutes at a Walmart. Eventually, he was detained at 3:41. In other words, he was on the loose after he started shooting for about an hour and 20 minutes. Evan Perez, we got some new information from the sheriff, from the FBI, and the ATF. What stood out to you?
Wolf, the fact that this suspect not only mixes in with the kids who are running for their lives from that school, he mixes in to get away, and then ends up essentially behaving like just a normal person. You know, goes to the Walmart and buys something to drink at the Subway inside that store, and then goes to a McDonald's nearby, and then sits there for a while, apparently, perhaps thinking over what he had just done, and then the police managed to arrest him thereafter. So he's on the loose, as you said, for more than an hour. And just imagine, having just carried out this shooting, he climbs through all 3 floors of that school, shoots people on all 3 floors of that school, and then manages to put down his gun, put down the backpack that he carried, and then makes a getaway with all the people who are fleeing for their lives. It's a remarkable thing that they've just described.
He also, the ATF representative, told us that the weapon, the AR-15 style rifle, was legally purchased by this individual about a year or so ago. He's 19 now, so he was only 18 years old, and that's legal in Florida, right?
It's completely legal, Wolf, and here's the thing about our gun laws in this country, and again, policymakers are going to have to decide what to do about this, but he was old enough to buy an AR-15 style rifle. I mean, if you looked at those things, he's able to buy that as an 18-year-old, but he's not old enough to buy a handgun. This is a deadly piece of machinery that he was able to use to carry out this massacre. Again, completely legal. He passed a background check. Nothing at all out of the ordinary for this gun shop that sold him this rifle. But if he, at his age, he would not have been able to buy a simple handgun, but he's able to buy this much deadlier weapon.
You know, Shimon is with us as well. Shimon Prokupecz, our crime and justice reporter. The FBI special agent, Shimon in charge, says that there was a warning. The FBI did get a warning from an individual in Jackson, Mississippi on September 25th of last year about someone by the name Nikolas Cruz. Nicholas spelled Nikolas Cruz, C-R-U-Z, but they couldn't find any connection to Florida, and basically that warning went nowhere.
That's exactly right, Wolf, and we learned a little more details from the FBI, the special agent in charge, from this morning when he first told us about this. They at least explained a little bit more about what they did, in that there was an internal database search. They reached out to YouTube. YouTube took down the posting, and then they interviewed the man who made this complaint to the FBI. He forwarded this link, this tip to the FBI, and that's essentially where it stopped. They did some open source searching, but that's it. There was no further investigation. They didn't do any other sort of investigative tactics like subpoenas or search warrants, or perhaps trying to learn more about him. I guess we will find out later on as to why that is the case. I mean, in many situations like this, the FBI argues we just get too many tips, and so we can't follow all of them. We can't open investigations on all of them. But however, that may not be enough for families, certainly, who are dealing with this shooting, having lost one of their children, a child, or one of the adults who were killed here. So certainly, I think as this continues, this will be something the FBI will need to look at and see if there's anything they could have done differently. Because look, this tip to the FBI came to them in September. So plenty of time. And we know by September, he had purchased this weapon. So now the question is there anything the FBI could have done differently?
Well, couldn't they have gone to YouTube and couldn't YouTube have found out who posted that video or that statement on YouTube with that direct threat to the school children?
So that's a good question, Wolf, and that's legally, I'm not entirely certain that they could without a subpoena or some kind of legal authority to go ahead and request YouTube to turn over that information. And it's not even entirely clear that the YouTube would know where this posting came. In some situations, these posts come anonymously. There are ways you can mask the IP address, but with the legal authority, with a subpoena and some of the tactics that the FBI has, I'm sure if they would have dug deep, they probably would have been able to discover where this came from. But again, it's not clear if they would have had the legal authority to go ahead and do that, given how little information they had at the time that this posting was made.
Let me bring in Ann Milgram, the former New Jersey Attorney General. Did the FBI, Ann, have the legal authority to go to YouTube and question YouTube and ask YouTube who posted that? Where is that individual? Where does that individual reside? Could they have done that?
Yeah, so a couple of points. I mean, the first is that the short answer is that it's very common in a situation like this to issue a subpoena to YouTube to do exactly what was just discussed, to basically say, can you give us an internet protocol address that would let the FBI essentially track back to figure out, if they could, who that internet protocol address was attached to. And so that is a common law enforcement tactic. I do want to say here, though, that one of the things that I think we're very focused on this one FBI piece of information, but I think what's really critical in situations like this is the after action work where we look at everything, where we look at all the dots, because the FBI and this one piece of information, it is a very important dot, but there are others. There are questions about social media posts. There are questions about emails being sent to that school. And so if I look at this, the question I am left asking is, if the FBI sees one dot, if the school sees another, but nobody sees the full picture, it's really hard for people to understand what they're dealing with. And so I would like to see in a case like this a really comprehensive look at everything that happened, what people knew, and really, to me, public safety is the #1 job of government, and we're clearly failing our kids and our families. How do we do this better? And so while I think it's important to focus on the FBI, it's one piece of this bigger conversation, and I don't want us to lose the fact that, Phil will be a bigger expert on this than I am, but the last time I remember having a conversation about did we connect the dots well enough, that was after 9/11, when we knew that we weren't doing a good enough job connecting pieces of disparate information. And I feel a little bit like I'm getting that same vibe here, that there are lots of pieces that were out there, but no one person or no one agency necessarily had access to all of it.
Well, let me ask Phil about that. All of us are always smarter with hindsight, but go ahead and respond, Phil.
Yeah, I think there's a simple question. I could not agree more. A simple question that we're going to miss if we focused on one snippet of information about the FBI. Let me give you a couple facts. We knew, and the family knew, he had access to a powerful rifle. We knew that there had been disciplinary issues with the school. It was public knowledge, presumably among his friends or at least associates, that he had violent postings on social media. I think the question we'll face is not a federal question. It's a question that should go to local police and to school officials across the country. When you see someone who requires intervention and you don't have a program or state money to intervene, what should we be doing in that case? Let me give you one example to close here, Wolf. We do gang interventions among state and local police across this country. Is there a program we need to develop for interventions for people who have these kinds of mental health issues? And does that involve taking away their weapon if they have one?
Peter Bergen is with us as well. Peter, you did an important article on CNN.com about gun violence here in the United States, just based on what we just heard from the representative from the ATF, that the weapon was legally purchased a year or so ago when this suspect was, only 18 years old, legally purchased in Coral Springs, Florida. What jumped out at you?
Well, the thing that I found very interesting is the FBI has a term of art for what we've been talking about here, which is this posting, and they call it leakage. And leakage is the idea that in school shootings and also in terrorist incidents, the perpetrator will have told a number of people what he's planning to do. He may not say it very directly, a time or a place, but there will be many hints. And so, for instance, the FBI really began first looking at this in the case of school shootings, but they've also started looking at it in terrorism cases. And they found in terrorism cases, in every incident, there are at least 3 people who know something, sometimes up to 15 people. And typically the people who know the most are the least likely to come forward because they're peers. The second most likely group of people to know something are family members, but they're also reluctant to come forward. And finally, you have authority figures like teachers and clerics and bosses. They often know something and they're quite likely to come forward, but they don't know very much. And finally, strangers are very likely to come forward, but they usually have the least useful information. So in all these cases, the people that have the most information, the most useful information, are peers and family members, and that's true whether it's a school shooting or a terrorist incident, and that's really the frame into which to look at prevention.
Evan, tell us more about this shooter. It's only been, a little bit more than 24 hours since the shooting began, but we've learned a lot about him.
Right, Wolf. I mean, there's a lot of online postings, extremist postings. There's things that he's clearly lashing out. According to his attorney and people close to him, his family members or people who he lived with, he's obviously had a lot of trauma in his life. His father died some time ago. His mother died more recently. His adopted mother died more recently. And that appears to have been the thing that perhaps unraveled a lot of what he is doing. We heard from one of the school officials earlier today that he may have been undergoing some kind of mental health treatment. None of that information appears to have been entered in anywhere where that would have come up on a background check when he went to buy a firearm. And again, under the federal law, the standard for denying someone to buy their, to use their Second Amendment rights to buy a firearm is either, obviously you have to be a felon or you have to be adjudicated by a judge as mentally defective. That's the term that they use, and none of those things had happened here. So, look, we were asking a lot of questions about what could have been done. There were clearly a lot of signs that were being picked up by people, including by people close to him, but nobody really thought that he could be capable of doing something like this. And that's one of those things that I think is going to nag at everybody, including the FBI and everybody who's come into contact with this young man.
And they're looking, Shimon, very, very carefully at all these details, not just to fully understand what happened, but to draw important lessons to try to make sure it doesn't happen again.
No, certainly always. I mean, after these situations, the FBI, the ATF, the local law enforcement, there's usually some kind of after-action report there, and they're always look to see what was missed, were there signs. And I think social media is going to play a big part in this. Certainly his mental health. We don't have a full picture of his mental health here. because obviously there are privacy laws. He's alive, he didn't die here, so they're also dealing with a legal case. There's really a lot we don't know about him, and police really, besides saying that he posted disturbing messages on social media and some of the stuff we have found on our own, one could only imagine what we've missed. And really the key here, I think, and then police have said this, the sheriff has talked about this, the mental health issue, and there were also signs of his behavior. His behavior had changed within the last year or so, and the sheriff said there were signs, and people should have noticed this, and people should have gone to the police, should have gone somewhere to report this. And that's what's missing, I think, in some of our understanding of exactly what led up to this. And this will be all part of what probably law enforcement will look at as they go back. They said they're going to try to find people they can talk to basically build out an idea of what was going on in his head leading up to this. It's a very important element here of friends of his, people at the school. Wolf, yesterday we heard from students at the school, some of them who, after they ran out of the building, said, they had known him. They knew he liked guns. They were not surprised to hear that he was behind this shooting. So all of that, for certain, is going to factor into this investigation and things that law enforcement is going to need to learn about and learn from.
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons they're going to have to learn from this. Phil Mudd, the authorities, they're talking to this suspect right now, and he's talking to them. Walk us through the process, how they're trying to come to grips with his motive of why he went to that school and began killing all these people.
That's right. That's not the first part of the process. So you got two initial questions. The first one is imminent threat. That is, were you planning something else? Is there, for example, an explosive device you planted someplace? The second immediate question you're going to have is somebody else not only aware of this, but is somebody else involved in a follow-on event? You've got to mitigate threat before you go in the future, before you go in the past and start discussing what the motivation was. My guess is even 24 hours in, they've gone a long way towards saying we're confident there was nobody else. We're confident, obviously, he didn't plan anything else. So they're going to have to go through a methodical exercise, not only to talk to him through time. What happened when you were 15, 16, 17? But we heard a few moments ago during the press conference, 2,000 plus interviews already. You've got to start collating that with what those 2,000 interviewees say to get to questions. For example, like if he says something happened to him when he was 17, does that correlate to what we heard from his friends, family, from students at school? That takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, Wolf.
Ann Milgram, once again, you're the former New Jersey Attorney General. As the authorities are questioning this individual right now, they're trying to get some answers. Can they believe what he's saying?
So let me say two things. The first is that I would suspect that he's no longer being questioned. As a rule, the questioning would happen before he was arraigned. It is possible he's still talking, but as we saw earlier today, he has a lawyer. Most lawyers would advise their clients not to talk further as they have an opportunity to formulate a defense. So we understood yesterday that they were talking to him for hours, and so I suspect he's given a lengthy statement to the police. And so that's really, I think, the first point is that piece of the conversation has probably ended. The second thing is as to whether or not they can believe them. Phil just explained it, I think, exceptionally well, which is that he will give them a lot of information if he's talking, and they will go and methodically check every single piece of information he has given them to make sure that it's accurate. And if it's not, they will go back to him or to his lawyer and say, look, we think that there's a lie here, and if he wants to come talk to us, he can come talk to them. He can always go talk to them in presence of counsel. But again, the sort of initial questioning, which happens, immediately after someone is in custody, would be the imminent threat questions, the future harm, and then they would have gone through, I think, already what else happened and what he was doing. And again, they could still question him with a lawyer, but I suspect when you're arraigned, that's usually stopped, at least temporarily.
But Ann, let me follow up with you and talk about what the Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel just told us, that the suspect arrived at this school yesterday at 2:19 p.m. Yes. He readied his weapon, his rifle, at 2:21. 2 minutes later, began killing people, going from classroom to classroom, and then he left. And then at 3:01, after going to a Walmart's, he went to a McDonald's, sat there for about 40 minutes. Then he left, and eventually he was detained by a local police officer. What does it say to you about the mindset of an individual like this who, after killing a lot of young people and
Yes.
and others, just goes to a Walmart for a drink, a cold drink, and then goes to McDonald's?
You know, Wolf, I mean, we've seen a number, tragically, we've seen a number of school shootings, and when the police arrive, there's usually one of two outcomes. One is that the police shoot and kill the shooter. Second is that the shooter shoots and kills themselves. So it is in the minority of cases that we see a suspect surrender. It's not unheard of, but I don't know that our shooter, that Cruz planned this far ahead, that he expected to walk out of that school. And so, you know, he leaves, and I don't want to speculate, but he's clearly wandering around. He's going to get a drink, to sit at a McDonald's, and then when he's apprehended, he's walking through a neighborhood. So I don't want to say without knowing more that, you know, that was his plan. It certainly, he left his backpack, as the sheriff just told us. It doesn't seem consistent with someone who had a plan, given the actions that we've just heard he took after.
And what does it say, Phil Mudd, to you that the shooter, you know, after he left to the school, went to the Walmart, went to the McDonald's, he was walking around, a police officer spotted him, he saw the clothes he was wearing that matched the clothes of the suspect, and he gave up without shooting. It was a very orderly arrest. What does that say to you? He stopped shooting after he left the school.
A lot of clues, I think, about the difference between people who are ideologically motivated. They want to go down. A lot of the people I follow, they want to go down in the fight. They want to go down in a hail of bullets. They want what we call suicide by cop. And also the fact that he wasn't thinking through the question of whether he could ultimately get away for more than an hour or two. If you're in his shoes and you think for just a moment, you know everybody's got a camera. There's a camera on every corner. There's going to be a cop on every corner. There are going to be students in that school that recognize you. He's going to a fast food restaurant. He's got to be thinking, if he's mentally stable, that he's going to be caught any moment now. I think this says he's not really an ideological shooter. He's got some serious mental issues. One more critical clue. He leaves the gun there. He doesn't want to die in a hail of bullets or shoot out with the police. Again, that goes to my contrast with people I saw who were saying, if I'm going to do this, it's going to be big, and I'm taking down law enforcement with me. He didn't seem to want to die or anticipate dying in this event.
Yeah, he was arrested without incident. The police officer just detained him and put him into the vehicle, and that was that. There was no further violence. Evan, talk a little bit about that.
Well, Wolf, I mean, one of the most, this is excellent police work. I mean, just the fact that they were able to catch this guy, the fact that he mixes in with some of the kids fleeing the school. What I was told by some sources down there is that the first call that came in, the first reports that came in, someone said that there was someone dressed in black who had come out of a car or a taxi or something and then had opened fire. And so when the police were trying to figure out who carried this out, they were looking for someone dressed in black. And if you can see from the video that we have there of when he was arrested, he was wearing a maroon shirt, not wearing black at all. So, you know, if you think about how quickly, just the fact that they were able to track him down, a local police officer in the town next door was able to find him there away from the school. It's remarkable police work. I think one of the things they did, they were able to look at some of the video immediately and were able to figure out what he was wearing, that it wasn't accurate, the first reports. And so the police work here, just in the fact that nobody else was able, I mean, obviously it's horrific, the number of people that were injured and killed, but they could have been a lot worse.
Certainly could have been. All right, everybody stand by.